Castle of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse is a platformer developed by Sega and released for the Master System in 1990. While the game shares similarities with the Genesis game of the same name, this 8-bit version is not a port or remake, but rather a brand new adventure built from the ground up. Thankfully, like its 16-bit brother, 8-bit Mickey was met with critical acclaim. Computer and Video Games magazine scored the game a 93%, stating, "With its massive variety of levels and secret rooms, Mickey Mouse ranks as the greatest platform game available for the Sega Master System. Literally months of gaming fun are to be had with this cracking cart, so be sure to direct some of your rapidly diminishing Christmas money in Mickey Mouse's direction." Mean Machines also gave the game a 93%, noting, "There are loads of hazards to overcome, and you'll need to call on all your platform skill to guide Mickey past the tricky obstacles and traps Evil Witch Miserable has laid. Mickey Mouse is the best Sega Master System game seen in a long time. Make it a priority purchase." Finally, Player One magazine scored the game a 97%, proclaiming, "Castle of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse is by far the best game ever produced on the Sega Master System. Flawless playability, very fine and very colorful graphics, all backed by simple but quality music." So, does Castle of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse for the Sega Master System still warrant the high praise? Let's take a look. The plot is wonderfully simple. Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse are spending another day dancing through Vera City when Minnie is snatched by the witch Miserable, apparently jealous of Minnie's beauty. Mickey pursues the mouse snapper all the way to the Castle of Illusion. Upon arriving at the castle's gate, an old man informs Mickey he must find the 7 Chaos Emeralds, the 7 gems of the rainbow, guarded by the Masters of Illusion. It's a simple plot with a hero, a villain, and a mission, and the game begins. At its core, Castle of Illusion is a straightforward platformer. Mickey can move at a reasonable pace, jump, and attacks with a butt bounce. And as one would expect from a 1990 release, the momentum, acceleration, and midair controls feel modern and precise. Mickey carries a little bit of momentum and won't stop on a dime, but can change directions reasonably quick. Jumping is also impressive, allowing the player to gain some inertia when jumping from a standstill, but also jumping much farther with a running start. The bounce attack is equally responsive, having the player press the second action button to initiate. This will allow Mickey to defeat enemies and smash certain objects. Mickey's signature feature, however, is his ability to pick up items and throw them. This can be useful for ranged attacks against enemies, removing blocks impeding progress, unlocking doors, or for moving platforms allowing the player to access new areas. This, of course, was not a feature of the 16-bit game. Finally, Mickey can slide down slopes, though I never found this useful. While nothing here is truly innovative, it does feel like a nice blend of Capcom's Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers and DuckTales, which is a good thing. Level progression is somewhat unique though. There are 6 levels total, and the player is initially given the opportunity to select between the first 3. This is where 8-bit Castle of Illusion is most like the 16-bit game, sharing similar level themes. The Enchanted Forest is a wooded area complete with underground caves. Toyland is like a child's playroom, and the dessert factory is made of chocolate bars and other goodies. After completing these 3 areas, 2 new ones are unveiled. The library features books as well as some office-themed decor, while the Clocktower is a trek through the inner workings of said tower. If the player manages to snag the 7 gems of the rainbow through these 5 areas, then the final level, the castle, is unlocked, which ultimately leads to the Witch Miserable. Castle of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse also presents a number of power-ups hidden inside treasure chests. Cake refills Mickey's health, with a small piece replenishing 1 hit point and the large piece refilling 2. There are mouse ears as well, which are extra lives. Additionally, the player can earn extra lives for every 10,000 points scored. This can be fairly easy with the coins hiding in some chests. Small coins are worth just 500 points, but the large ones are a whopping 2,000. This effectively means 5 large coins equals an extra life. After a few playthroughs, it won't be hard for platforming veterans to rack up a large life stack. Finally, there are 2 stars hiding in the game which extend Mickey's life bar. For this reason, I always play Toyland first, rather than the Enchanted Forest. Graphically, Castle of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse is a good-looking Master System game. The tile maps for the platforms are generally detailed and do a nice job looking both cartoonish while also giving the game some texture. Backgrounds can be a bit more hit or miss. Early levels tend to be more basic, with just a single shade of color and few details. As the game progresses, the detail improves, with ice cream cones, protractors, wafers, and music notes. The final couple of levels feature rich brick textures with clocks and windows, really pushing Castle of Illusion's presentation over the top. More impressive than the environments is Mickey himself. He is animated beautifully. His walking animation is complex with a smooth walk cycle. His bounce attack looks great. His idle animation fits his attitude, and he skids to a stop. Even the way he lifts and throws objects is excellent. While no one would confuse this for a Genesis title, Mickey's sprite and animation frames would not feel out of place on more advanced hardware. Moving along, we arrive at the soundtrack. This is the other part of the game which should be recognizable to fans of the Mega Drive game. The melodies are lifted straight from the 16-bit game, but more simplistic with fewer channels thanks to the reduced sound capabilities of the Master System. The melodies are mostly excellent and catchy. The notable exception is the Clocktower. As best as I can tell, this was written exclusively for this game, and it's terrific. The piece is rich and haunting, with a slow beginning building to an epic conclusion. I often criticize Master System music for being tinny and hollow, but every now and again the system manages to surprise me and some engineer coaxes something beautiful out of the hardware. So, with all of that out of the way, we arrive to the question asked at the beginning of the video. Does Castle of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse still warrant the praise it received nearly 28 years ago? As I play Castle of Illusion, I can't help but feel Sega took inspiration from the Capcom platformers released around the same time, especially DuckTales. The attack of each character is similar. Both feature treasure chests containing bonuses. Leaping around random locations will reveal hidden treasure. Both characters start with 3 hit points, which can be increased to 5. The level structures are linear, with a defined beginning and end, but feature branching paths along the way. Even the way the screen scrolls up and down is the same. The Master System library is filled with titles that are often viewed as Sega's answer to some NES game, and Castle of Illusion fits the bill, being an obvious nod to the Capcom classic. However, to simply call this a ripoff would be a disservice to the game, as Castle of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse can easily stand on its own merits. If I've said it once, I've said it 100 times. A good platformer has 2 main components: fluid controls and levels worth platforming through. On both these accounts, Castle of Illusion succeeds. I noted earlier the movement and jumping are both responsive and modern. This makes platforming off small blocks an absolute breeze, as opposed to stressful. But more impressive than the controls is the level design. First, the game never presents a challenge outside of Mickey's capabilities. There are no blind jumps and pixel precision is never required. The timing of every obstacle is perfectly planned, leading to a smooth experience testing the player's dexterity rather than their patience. Second, the level progression is excellent. For example, if playing the game in order, the player will encounter these worms on leaves. One needs to bounce off the worm to remove it, and then safely land on the leaf. This is over a bottomless pit, but it teaches the players to attack over a death pit. Then in Toyland, the player will need to bounce over 2 enemies, but there is no leaf acting as a safety net. The enemies are large too and don't die, making the task a touch easier. The dessert factory opens with a forced scrolling section. It's easy enough for sure, with large platforms and simple enemy patterns, but offers the player a sense of urgency, forcing one to make quick decisions. The final castle level combines these 2 elements, bouncing off enemies and forced screen scrolling, into one. The stage scrolls automatically, and the player needs to bounce off 3 small enemies, which vanish upon impact, to get over a massive pit. Twice. But because these elements were slowly introduced to the player, this tricky section doesn't overwhelm the player, as the skills necessary for success were taught to the player gradually over the course of the adventure. I also like how each of the 6 levels offers unique gimmicks and obstacles. The Enchanted Forest has the previously mentioned leaf platforms. Toyland relies heavily on barrels as platforms or a shield, blocking bubbles from hitting the player. The Dessert Factory has temporary platforms activated when Mickey jumps on them. The library introduces swimming, unless one accidentally fell in a previous level. The Clocktower has rotating platforms acting like conveyor belts. Finally, the castle has lanterns, which light up dark rooms. The increasing difficulty, along with new level gimmicks with each passing level, makes Castle of Illusion an engaging experience from beginning to end. While admittedly short, clocking in at around 35 minutes, few moments are ever duplicated, and the game is void of repetition or padding. If there was one area where the game could use some improvement, however, it's the bosses. This tree in the Enchanted Forest is all about timing, forcing the player to jump at just the right moment to get in and attack. If one attempts to dodge his leaf attack first, the tree will begin its tornado move before the player can strike. It makes for an experience that is annoying at first and super easy once the timing is mastered. The Jack-in-the-Box boss in Toyland is even more annoying. Balls drop from the top of the screen as soon as he lands, making it hard to both dodge the projectiles while also landing a hit. In other titles with ceiling projectiles, the player will first dodge the obstacles and then attack the enemy once the task is completed, which makes a lot more sense. Instead, this fight is just a sloppy war of attrition. Speaking of dodging ceiling obstacles, this chocolate bar does it right. After avoiding the drop projectiles, the player will need to wait for the chocolate bar to reassemble itself, and then toss a block at it. However, this results in a lot of downtime, with both the left and right sides of the screen acting as safe places. The remaining bosses are admittedly better. This book boss in the library will launch letters at Mickey. The player then needs to bounce off these with precision in order to strike the book. The pacing of the letter attacks and their random nature tests the player's reflexes and dexterity, making this fight engaging. The Clocktower boss is also decent. The player is tasked with avoiding or attacking 2 gears grinding back and forth on the ground, and then attacking the clock face when it dives towards Mickey. Avoiding 3 enemies can be tricky at first, but the tight controls make for a fair fight. Defeating these 5 bosses will reward 5 gems of the rainbow, and combined with 2 other gems which just happen to be lying around, a rainbow bridge is revealed, allowing Mickey access to the previously mentioned final level, the castle. At the end of this level are 2 more bosses. The first is a dragon. What I like about this boss is it actually reacts to the player. It will launch its projectiles based on where Mickey is on the screen. This creates an opening where the player can quickly launch a barrel at its head. After a few hits, the dragon goes down and Mickey finally faces off against the witch, Miserable. This is easily the toughest fight in the game. Miserable has 2 projectiles which ricochet across the screen. The fact they don't make it all the way to the left or right hand side of the screen makes the whole area feel very cramped, and even after multiple playthroughs, I never really got a feel for the rhythm of the whole encounter. Still, I guess it's a worthy final fight. Anyway, with Miserable defeated, Mickey saves Minnie and the adventure comes to an end. Then, of course, the credits roll. One final thing I want to mention is the overall level of quality found within Castle of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse. For starters, the game features virtually no slowdown whatsoever, humming along at a smooth 60 frames per second. I was also struck by how little flicker there is in the game. The reason for this can be found in the enemy design. The developers weren't afraid to create small enemies, which results in fewer sprites on each scan line. This isn't obvious at first, as enemies like knights and knights are large, but the little planes, wind-up cars, insects, chocolate drops, seahorses, music notes, among other enemies are all 16 pixels tall and wide or less, reducing the amount of sprites on each line, creating a smooth running game with few graphical issues. The bosses are clever as well. The book and chocolate bar use background tiles to reduce the sprite count while still offering large bosses. The chocolate bar looks far more complex than it actually is, and it's clear the developers wanted to use every graphical trick available to create a rich visual experience. But this level of thoughtfulness isn't limited to the graphics. I was struck by how each destructible item was methodically placed, always giving the player at least one attempt to take out a tricky enemy and never leaving the player hanging. Castle of Illusion is void of any cheap moments where the player is forced to take damage, except the Jack-in-the-Box, to progress. Speaking of thoughtful, Castle of Illusion is filled with secret nooks and crannies. These can be obvious areas where a barrel is used to reach a higher area, or truly hidden areas behind walls. Between jumping around hoping to uncover hidden treasure chests, branching paths leading to goodies, and truly secret areas, Castle of Illusion offers enough bonus content warranting repeat playthroughs for those inclined. Castle of Illusion is not perfect, however. As soon as an object or enemy leaves the screen, it resets. This means broken blocks will regenerate and defeated enemies reappear, which can be somewhat off-putting. However, this does allow the player to reset a puzzle in case a block is broken, which impedes progress. So I guess that is nice and works in the game's favor. Another nitpick is these rotating corkscrew things only have 2 frames of palette swapping, meaning it's impossible to tell which way they are spinning. But outside of these minor issues, Castle of Illusion is a surprisingly good platformer. While I'm not certain it's better than the 16-bit Mickey, as Master System fans often tell me, the game is easily up there with the likes of Capcom's Disney offerings. The game will likely be easy to platforming veterans, but this is because the game is void of cheap obstacles, poor enemy placement, or slippery controls. The difficulty curve is excellent from the opening stages through the final castle, always preparing the player for what's ahead and never leaving the player lost on how to tackle an enemy or progress forward. So yeah, Castle of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse is definitely worth the praise it received back in 1990. The controls are spot on, with the perfect amount of momentum and mid-air maneuverability, making the game feel natural with a short learning curve. The bounce attack is performed with a single button instead of 2 buttons, and engages every single time. Challenges and obstacles are always fair, and when a death occurs, it always feels like the player's fault, rather than the result of cheap design. The levels are varied, constantly presenting new things for the player to do, while working within the confines of a 2-button controller. The technical presentation is also ace, with pleasing visuals and terrific animation without any graphical hiccups. While I'd prefer the music not to be watered-down versions of its bigger brothers, the melodies are still catchy as hell, and while I do wish the bosses were more compelling, Castle of Illusion does feature plenty of extra lives, as well as a whopping 9 continues, so nothing is out of reach for players of average skill. In closing, even though the quality isn't on the same level as Super Mario Bros. 3 or Kirby's Adventure, if you're still a fan of 8-bit platformers, Castle of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse is definitely worth a look.